John Corsaro Jr. grew up in a close-knit Pennsylvania family as the older brother of Danielle Imbo, the youngest of 3 siblings. From an early age, John took on a protective role, especially toward Danielle, who was known for her strong personality, musical talent, and reliability. The two shared a normal sibling bond, supportive, familiar, and steady, rooted in family routines and mutual trust. Danielle was the kind of sister who stayed connected, showed up when expected, and kept her life predictable. That's why, when she suddenly went silent, John immediately sensed something was wrong. He knew his sister's habits, her sense of responsibility, and her devotion to her child. This wasn't someone who disappeared without explanation. For John, her absence wasn't confusing, it was alarming. From the very beginning, he understood that whatever had happened to Danielle was serious, and that instinct would drive his relentless involvement in the search for answers. Felice, their mother, told him that Danielle may have stayed the night at Richard Patroni's house, the man she had recently been seeing. That explanation seemed plausible. Because of that, John used his spare key. He completed the planned repairs inside the home and then left. Meanwhile, across town, the Patroni family also started to sense that something was not right. That same day, Richard's mother, Marge, was hosting guests. A few friends had come over to watch a major race. Even so, Richard was not there when everyone arrived. Neither he nor Danielle could be reached on their phones. Just like Felice, Marge believed Richard had likely stayed at Danielle's place after spending the previous night out with her. However, that assumption quickly began to unravel. Danielle failed to show up for her hair appointment scheduled at 11 a.m. She had also made plans with her friend Christine, who happened to be Richard's sister. Everyone knew Danielle was reliable. Canceling plans without notifying anyone was completely out of character for her. Christine attempted to call Danielle multiple times, but each call went unanswered. There was still no sign of either Danielle or Richard, and concerns slowly shifted into serious fear. Danielle's ex-husband, Joe Imbo, arrived around 5 p.m. to drop off their 1.5-year-old son, just as he always did. Immediately, he sensed that something was wrong. Danielle was not there to open the door. Instead, members of her family were present. They informed him that she had not come back home since the previous night. Joe left their son with Danielle's family and went out to search for help on his own. While he was away, Danielle's relatives began calling hospitals, emergency rooms, friends, and anyone else they believed might have information. No one had heard from Richard or Danielle, and there was no way to determine where they might be. That night, Richard had been driving a black Dodge Dakota truck. It was the vehicle he planned to use to drive Danielle home. At first, both families believed the couple had simply stayed at one another's homes. Danielle's mother assumed she was with Richard. Christine Patroni believed he was with Danielle. That belief lasted only until they realized neither person knew where the other was. It was more than just a lack of contact. They were gone. Worry continued to grow, though full panic had not yet set in. The first day of Danielle Imbo and Richard Patroni's disappearance had begun. It marked the beginning of one of the most unusual missing persons cases in modern American law enforcement. Before they vanished, the lives of Danielle Imbo and Richard Patroni closely resembled those of many others. They were steady and predictable, filled with the normal highs and lows of adult life. They first met through Christine Patroni, Richard's sister, and Danielle's best friend from high school. One evening, Christine invited Danielle out to dinner, and Richard joined them later that same night. What seemed like an ordinary evening at the time became the start of a relationship between Danielle and Richard that slowly deepened. Danielle Odeber was born in Pennsylvania on August 7, 1970. Felice and John Corsaro were the parents of 3 children, and Danielle was the youngest. Growing up alongside her older brother, John Jr., Danielle developed a love for music early in life. She frequently sang at local talent shows and social gatherings because of her strong, beautiful voice. Eventually, she became the lead singer of a small rock band that performed in bars and restaurants throughout the area. While pursuing her passion for music, Danielle also established a career in finance by working as a loan officer at a nearby car dealership. It was there that she met Joe Imbo, who had come in to purchase a new vehicle. Their relationship progressed quickly, and they married in 2001. After the wedding, Joe asked Danielle to quit her music work so they could focus on starting a family together. They welcomed a son named Joe in 2003, and he soon became the center of Danielle's world. Not long after, however, problems began to surface. When Joe traveled to attend the Super Bowl that year, Danielle stayed home to care for their sick child. When he returned, he made a shocking announcement. He asked for a divorce. Joe admitted he had feelings for someone else. He moved out shortly afterward, though he continued to spend time with their son on weekends. Danielle, now a single mother, was left to manage both parenting and finances on her own. She took a job at an insurance company handling financial claims to support herself and her son. The company allowed her to work from home, giving her greater flexibility and control over her daily schedule. Over time, the pressure of everything she was dealing with began to show. It was said that she smoked as much as a pack of cigarettes each day and spent most of her time indoors, dividing her attention between work and caring for her son. On the weekends when her son stayed with his father, Danielle had time to herself. On one of those quiet evenings, she went out to dinner with Christine. That was also the night Richard joined them, and things started to shift. Henry Richard Patroni Jr. was born in Philadelphia on August 29, 1969. He was the eldest child of Marge Patroni and Richard Patroni Sr., and he had two sisters, Christine and Elisa. Richard worked full-time in the family-owned shop as a pastry chef, where he earned a living making wedding cakes. Friends and coworkers described him as talented and dedicated, someone who took great pride in his work. At just 20 years old, Richard became a father. His daughter, Angela, was born while he was dating someone else. Although the relationship did not last long, they remained on good terms and agreed to share custody of their child. Richard moved into an apartment located directly above the bakery where his family worked. Angela lived with him during the week and stayed with her mother on weekends. Richard was deeply involved in his daughter's life and often brought her along to work. People around them noticed how committed he was to being a parent and appreciated how much Angela enjoyed helping out at the shop. Richard didn't just care for Angela, she was constantly on his mind. In 2004, when Angela turned 13, she chose to move in with her mother full-time. While that change made Richard's daily routine a bit easier, he continued to stay in regular contact with her. As both Richard and Danielle reflected on their past experiences and personal lives during this period, their bond grew stronger. Their families had known one another for years and were pleased with the relationship. On Saturday, February 19, 2005, Danielle Imbo accepted Richard Patroni's invitation to spend the night with him in downtown Philadelphia. After that night, they had not spoken much in the weeks leading up to the disappearance. Danielle was the one who had ended their relationship following her divorce. She did decide to meet up that night though. Danielle had a rare chance to go out for the evening because her son Joe was with his dad for the weekend. The event happened over a long weekend in honor of President's Day. The city was full of life and action. The streets were full of happy people enjoying the holiday spirit. All the seats in bars and restaurants were taken. Even though the air was full of excitement, it had cooled down to about 26 degrees. The cold was very strong, especially by rivers and in open spaces. Richard and Danielle met at a place at 429 South Street called Abilene's. People in the area loved going to the pub to watch live music. They got there just as the place was getting really busy with people. There were a lot of people at the show that night. Tony Valentino, a friend of Richard's for a long time, joined them at some point during the night. The two of them had been friends since they were 7 years old. His show wasn't planned. Anthony came over to say hi because he was at the same bar. The three of them talked and watched the live show together for part of the evening. Witnesses said that Danielle and Richard looked a lot like a couple. They were sitting close to each other, hugged each other and looked calm. They did not seem to be tense or at odds with each other. Later, bartenders and customers said that both of them had a drink or two, but only a couple of beers each. There was no sign of alcohol on their faces. and they acted cool and in control the whole time they were at the bar. At about 11:45 p.m., the live show was over. Some people in the group, like Anthony Valentino, were going to go to another bar where there was another show. But Richard and Danielle said they couldn't because they had to spend the next day with their kids. For the night, they were ready to end things and go home to rest. Richard said he had parked his black 2001 Dodge Dakota truck close. He told Danielle he would drive her back to her place, and then he was going to go home himself. Nothing out of the ordinary seemed to happen when they left. Anthony was one of the people who saw them leave the bar together and walk towards where Richard had parked. That was the last time someone saw them. No camera footage caught them leaving or any sign of them moving after they left the venue. That night they were last seen in the middle of the city and were nowhere to be found. That was the last time Danielle Imbo and Richard Patroni were seen for sure. A missing persons report was eventually filed with police after an entire day passed without any word from either of them. 24 hours had gone by since anyone had last seen them. Until that point, authorities had taken no action because they believed both individuals were adults who may have chosen to spend time. The involvement of two adults and a vehicle made the case especially challenging. cooperated during the search, supported one another, appeared together in the media, and coordinated efforts to reach as many people as possible. At first, they seemed united in their mission to bring Danielle and Richard home. However, as time passed with no news sightings or breakthroughs, strain began to develop between the two families, and tensions slowly started to rise. A few weeks after the individual disappeared, some people started to develop quiet doubts. Certain members of Richard's family began questioning whether this truly could have been an accident. Some even believed, without any evidence, that Danielle might have played a role in his disappearance and then vanished herself. This idea began circulating despite being fueled only by frustration and uncertainty. Because of this, Danielle's family formed a theory of their own. They believed Richard might have been tangled up in his past, and that whatever happened that night was the result of something he had done. Once again, there was no actual evidence to support this belief. It became obvious that the divide between the families was widening. The two families stopped working together entirely. Each began acting independently, which reduced communication and ended all joint public statements from both sides. During the main investigation, detectives turned their attention to the people closest to Danielle. One of the most notable was Joe Imbo, her former husband and the father of her child. Based on available information, Joe had shown interest in reconciling with Danielle shortly before she went missing. People close to Richard stated that Joe had called him multiple times and expressed that he disliked his relationship with Danielle. Patron's parents said that one of those phone calls was a warning. They claimed Joe told Richard that if he didn't calm down, something bad would happen. What was said during those calls could not be verified, but phone records confirmed that the calls did occur. Because of this, investigators began examining Joe's whereabouts more closely at the time of the disappearance. Joe was reportedly at his parents' home with his son during the weekend Danielle and Richard vanished. Other individuals were also present in the house that night. All of them gave statements that were consistent. Joe never left the house. He went to sleep before midnight and did not wake up again until morning. Multiple witnesses confirmed seeing him, and none of their accounts conflicted. Police reviewed all the evidence thoroughly and concluded that Joe had a solid alibi. There was no direct evidence linking him to the disappearance. Even so, his name continued to surface in online discussions as rumors, theories, and speculation spread. The distance between the two families grew even more. Joe Imbo was never officially identified as a suspect. However, some members of Richard's family still had doubts. These rumors caused significant pain to Danielle's family because they were not only untrue but also deeply hurtful. The two families would never be able to reconcile again. The investigation lacked a clear direction due to the absence of clues, witnesses, or physical evidence. Because there was no solid proof, many theories emerged out of nowhere, each rooted in speculation. One such theory suggested that the couple's disappearance was the result of actions planned by an outside party. In February 2008, the FBI released a public statement proposing that hired individuals might have been involved. The statement emphasized that there was absolutely no evidence, especially regarding the missing vehicle, which could indicate a highly organized operation. A truck of that size could not simply vanish without careful planning. Investigators stated that the incident appeared to have been planned in advance and executed flawlessly. From that point forward, the case was no longer viewed as a typical missing persons situation. It was classified as a possible crime that may have been premeditated. Even so, investigators were unable to identify a suspect or a motive. Danielle and Richard did not appear to have any enemies or connections to dangerous activity. Both maintained low profiles and lived stable lives. Neither had debts, criminal histories, or known disputes that could have resulted in such a targeted act. At times, the FBI formally became involved in the investigation. For both Danielle and Richard, authorities examined their bank records, credit reports, phone logs, messages, employment details, social circles, and personal backgrounds. Nothing unusual was found. Another widely discussed theory involved the idea of a secret life. Some believed that one or both of them may have been involved in covert work or activities unknown to others. This theory stemmed from the belief that if there was no ordinary explanation, then something hidden must have been happening. The FBI also investigated this possibility. However, they found nothing to support it. There was no documentation, testimony, or technical evidence showing that Danielle or Richard were involved in any secret or illegal activities. For law enforcement, the theory lacked factual support and was dismissed as unlikely. None of the theories helped bring the case closer to being solved. Instead, they only made the mystery seem larger. Despite extensive police efforts, federal involvement, and media coverage, the disappearance of 2 adults and a vehicle in the middle of a heavily populated area could not be explained. It had been 2 decades since Danielle Imbeau and Richard Patroni were last seen. Throughout that period, the case was reviewed repeatedly. Witnesses were re-interviewed, leads were re-examined, and new investigative teams were assembled. Investigators pursued all of these efforts, yet none of them brought answers about what had occurred. In 2015, authorities publicly announced that the case would undergo an intensive review. More than 50 detectives were involved. They examined every lead, report, and connection available to them. Over 300 new tips were submitted during that effort. These tips came from many sources, ranging from concerned members of the public to anonymous informants. Some claimed they believed they had spotted the missing vehicle. Others said they had overheard suspicious conversations or had unclear information about possible locations of bodies. However, each of these tips was investigated and ultimately dismissed as having no relevance. The fresh perspectives neither confirmed nor disproved the earlier theories. One incident stood out in March 2005, roughly a month after the couple disappeared. Late at night, a call came in from an unidentified number stating that Danielle was inside a train car beneath the Walt Whitman Bridge and that her life was at risk. Police were notified immediately. Officers responded, and John Odebree Jr. personally went to the scene. They searched the area and inspected every freight car. No one was found. There were no signs that a person, a vehicle, or anything else had been there recently. It was eventually determined that the tip was false, and the caller was never identified or heard from again. Despite years of effort and extensive investigation, the status of the case never changed. It remained open. Police never definitively ruled out deliberate foul play, but no one involved in the investigation could develop a theory that stood up to the evidence. Just as in the early days, the main theories were never proven. Attempts were made to link the case to other crimes, but none were successful. Searches through databases, including records of unidentified remains, produced no matches. Initially, it seemed nearly impossible that 2 people in a vehicle could disappear in a city without being seen. There were countless opportunities for cameras to capture them on roads, near residences, at gas stations, ATMs, and auto repair shops, yet not a single camera recorded anything. One of the most critical elements was the missing vehicle. A full-sized pickup truck with distinctive features was still unaccounted for. Without a tow truck or external assistance, it could not have been removed from the street. Yet there were no tow records matching its description, and no verified reports of a similar vehicle being transported. Police searched private storage facilities, paid parking areas, junkyards, and auto repair shops. The truck was never located. Investigators from both the FBI and local authorities were unable to develop a scenario that aligned with all the evidence. There was no explanation for how 2 people in a vehicle could be removed from a city without attracting attention. When Danielle Imbeau and Richard Patroni disappeared, the case became one of the most baffling and unresolved mysteries in the history of modern investigations. As of April of this year, nearly 20 years later, the case remains unsolved. The FBI continues to actively investigate and is offering a reward of up to $15,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible for their disappearance. If you found this case intriguing, make sure to like and subscribe. We upload new crime case videos every night. Stay tuned and brace yourself for what's coming next.